Most career pivots come from a place of restlessness, but some come from clarity. Shipra Bhatt spent over 18 years building brands in the corporate world, the kind of career that looks great on paper. But somewhere along the way, she realized that she just didn't want to market global brands, she wanted to build them. So today, she works with emerging D2C and F&B founders, shaping their brand strategy, their storytelling, and their customer experience from day one. Hi Shipra, how are you doing?
All good. How are you?
I'm good too. Thank you so much for agreeing to be a guest on this series.
If you reach out, Neha, why wouldn't I agree, man?
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything for you.
And it's been 18 years since we last spoke, but it's so nice to get connected again.
I know. It's like, 18 years is quite a while, man.
18 years.
So long.
Actually, 19 now, 25. So 19 years since we last connected.
Yeah, true.
And because we didn't connect, I don't have that much detail about your life story. So why don't you give me some context? What have you been doing? What have you been up to?
Yeah, oh my God, I have to now rewind like 18 years back for this. So I think, I think we were in campus together trying to get campus placements. I believe you were the campus coordinator, if I'm not wrong, at one point. Right?
No.
Okay,
I was too busy not studying and doing everything else.
I remember that because, the Quantum, which is the company I initially joined, they'd come to campus.
Yes.
And I remember when they came to campus, then for some weird reason, I never attended their, the initial presentation and their whatever explanation about what they do. And I remember I didn't attend it. And then all my friends, they came to me later saying, you have to, look at this company. You have to kind of go there and speak to them. We think it's perfect for you. And I was like, well, why? Like, nobody's heard of this company. Nobody even knows what qualitative research is. We were all at that time eyeing for the GSKs and the Pepsis and the whatever big names, right? So then I was like, okay, fine, there must be something. They're like, no, it's perfect for you. And I didn't understand it at that time. So when I went, and then I understood that, they were right, because I ended up in a company that was all about consumer insights, that was all about consumer psychology, understanding the why, cultural shifts, trends. And that was actually something that I think interested me like subconsciously. And I probably had a knack for it without actually realizing it. Maybe my friends were good enough to kind of pick that up before I could. So they actually encouraged me to get into Quantum, right? And I was there for about close to 9.5 years, worked across multiple brands, partnered with their marketing teams, like with the Pepsis, the Nestle. So the guys who I aspired to be on, I was actually guiding their marketing teams. I was like, what a flip in the story. So Pepsi, Nestle, even GSK, Airtel, like all these guys, so you're working with them, partnering with them on their marketing campaigns, trying to really get, some deep consumer insights so these guys can have long-term strategic marketing calendars. And KFC was one of my clients at that time. And it was just a funny story because they're like, well, you've given enough of this, what you should do from the other side of the table. Why don't you come to our side and actually execute what you said? Nice. So I was like, that sounds like a bit of a tricky challenge, but interesting one. So that's what happened. I said, okay, fine, let me hop over to the client side now. It had been 9.5 years. So then I moved on to KFC. And then again, within that, I actually got into hardcore marketing, spent a lot of time doing multiple sub-functions and then eventually multiple markets. So in my last, I was with the MENA business, where I was handling, all of your Gulf, North Africa, Turkey, CIS countries. So that was like a fairly big geographical spread. But that's it feels like now that I'm saying it feels like a lot in 18 years, but it's, sort of how it's evolved.
Yeah. When we start telling our stories back to ourselves, it is really interesting to see, what all we have done. And frankly, we connected because your new role was the one that that seemed more like a pivot. But from Quantum to KFC, also in itself, you completely changed the industry, right? Because you went from pure research into actually execution, which is two very different animals.
Absolutely. I didn't think of it till you said it, but I think it's true. Like, that itself was a reinvention and a pivot for me, because one, I was always the strategic sort of guidance, cultural insights, trend spotting person, consumer insights, behavior person. And then it was like, okay, now get into hardcore marketing, how do you talk in the language that a consumer would understand, right? How do you speak back to them what you know about them? right? It's a different way of looking at the customer. I knew nothing about digital marketing. I knew nothing about e-commerce or, store marketing. So even at that time, it was a big change. And then again, after 9.5 years, I decided to make another big change, right? Which is, let me try doing it myself, right? So I think, this is the second pivot in my life. I didn't realize.
Consumer research in itself gives you so much information about what's happening within a country as well, right? So when you decided to come back to India and when you decided to choose the industry or choose the kind of people that you're working with, what were some of the thoughts that were going on in your mind? What made India so exciting?
So when I was looking at India and I saw, and to be honest, this wasn't my first preference, right? It was, let me look at the job market as always. I've always been in corporate or in, proper 9 to 5 and all that. But when I got here, I was like, but there is so much energy and buzz and people doing amazing things. And just being happy doing it, right? And they're starting up their own brands or companies or organizations. Tech was booming. People had their own little studios and stuff like that. And and then I took a reflection and I was like, well, maybe I have just been too narrow in that approach, right? I have just been one job and then let's move to another job and then whatever, continue. But when I got here, I was supremely impressed with the energy. Like all I could see was startups. All I could see was, founder culture. All I can see is, people doing multiple things. And I think somewhere that kind of infected me in a way that I was like, I want to be part of this. I want to feel that energy and I want to feel that buzz and I want to be a part of that vibe. So I think that's probably why India, because in MENA and in the Gulf region, you actually don't see it that much. People are far more structured and, they're still in that corporate life circle. But I think in India, people are far more experimentative.
Yeah, there is a lot of creativity in the chaos that is India.
Yes.
I can totally feel that energy and buzz from you. And while you were working here, or when you started working and you found your own clients and you started, working with the different founders, was there like a certain mindset shift that you had to do for yourself after working for so long? In a cushy job.
Yeah. And actually, it wasn't like one or two. There were like a lot of them because I think after 18 years of being in a certain routine environment, it's obviously not routine, but what I am now, that was routine. Right. So after being in there for so long, you actually, I think one of the biggest things I realized is you start relying on the brand to give you credibility. Right. So my credibility comes because I am the marketing director at KFC or I am the AVP at Quantum. Right. So you build yourself with that backing and that persona. When you're doing it yourself, you don't have those crutches, actually. Right. You just like, okay, this is just me. So why should this founder or this person or whoever, this organization engage with just me? So that mindset shift was something that I think took me a little while to kind of come to terms with, that I can't rely on this anymore. Like I can't take the backing of, I don't have a brand backing. So I have to build my own brand. Right. And I think that's where, it came into being that, okay, how do I build my brand? What are my values? What do I stand for? And what is the message that I'm sending out to the world in my conversations, in my LinkedIn, in my social, everywhere. So I think that was a big mindset shift. And that took a lot of time to get comfortable with. Right. It wasn't an easy one. I think the second most important one for me would be like just being okay with asking dumb questions. Like, because when you're in corporate and when you're leading, especially teams, you have the teams who will do a lot of things for you. They come back, they might be the ones asking, silly little innocent questions, or you ask them and, not the whole world gets to know in a way, right? But now when you're doing it yourself, you kind of don't know. Like some days I'm dealing with a fintech company. Tomorrow I'm dealing with a, F&B, or I'm dealing with a mithai company or something. These aren't industries that I am necessarily, fully aware of. And I don't have command in that category. So I have to be humble or silly enough to actually ask the questions, right? And I have to ask 50 questions. And sometimes it can be annoying, but, you learn to ask a lot more, I think, because when you're in the brand side or when you're in the corporate side, you're naturally fed a lot of questions, there is so much data flowing in there. Everybody's throwing data in your face. This is how many awareness campaigns. This is our conversion rate. This is our whatever, right? Everybody's throwing data at your face. Here you have to go ask for it.
Yeah.
So I think that was another shift, because I wasn't used to that much of asking and probing. You feel like, will they feel offensive? Will they feel bad? But now I'm like, no, I have to ask. This is my job. If I don't know you well enough, I can't help you.
And one clear learning point that you kind of identified for yourself was the fact that if I'm going to work with different industries, obviously I will not have enough knowledge about those industries. What was one of the skills that you would have developed over time that came a lot into play?
Yeah. So I think two, probably one from each of my organizations, right? Okay. Like from my time in consumer insights, I think that is the most valuable. I think that I have used irrespective of where I've gone after, right? So I think that has just taught me, like, how do you stay connected to the ground? How do you listen right? How do you understand what's not being said? Because a lot of times consumers don't know what they want. They absolutely don't. You show them 5 concepts, they like all 5 also, right? So but how do I know which one of those is the one that I need to kind of take forward? So I think being able to decode, I mean, I'm not saying I've learned it 100%, but being able to sort of nuance that, decode it, and then package it in a way that is actionable. I think that is something that I've definitely picked up over the years, mostly from Quantum and then from my KFC experience. And then specifically from KFC, I would say the ability to kind of work at both long-term and short-term, right? Okay. Because that, again, to me was something that when you're in hardcore marketing or in a proper corporate, multinational kind of corporate structure where you have global brand values, you have global campaigns running, how do you kind of balance a global voice and then distill it down to cultural nuances, cultural relevance, and then also drive short-term conversions and sales, right? So that's the end objective. So I think that to me was another thing that I'm continuing to kind of work with. But at the same time, I understand that my founders and my startup owners and all of these, enthusiastic people, they need immediate results. They need sales now to be able to survive for those long term. So I think that's something that I'm kind of bringing in, when I work with them.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, I can say this 100% from experience that founders love the instant gratification. Yeah. I need a win now.
Exactly.
Something now.
Yeah.
The vision, obviously, and you're right, the vision gets blurred, right? You might start with saying, this is what my brand looks like, but the reality of the market hits you really hard. And that's when you realize that, okay, we'll worry about what the brand does later.
Correct.
Which I'm sure comes up a lot with founders. They're like, what the brand does, I don't care. I need to have my monthly sales. So what's the one message or what's the one argument that always kind of helps you convince these guys that they cannot let the brand go?
So I think, that conversation is never easy. And I think it's never a one-off conversation, right? Yeah. I think it's a repeated reminder, repeated, sort of, words or encouragement in a way that I have to keep feeding into their ears so that they kind of get the message eventually. But I think most do come around, right? Because I genuinely believe that the people that I've partnered with, they're not in it for the short term. Nobody's in it for the short term. You don't set up a business thinking, okay, 5 years down the line, I'm going to shut shop. Maybe you might think, okay, 15, 20 years, I want to sell it off. That could be a big vision, but nobody's in it immediately for the short term, right? So I think when you kind of understand and realize that, and you make the owners or the founder startup owners know that you understand this, that, you're also in it for the long run. Now, if you're in it for the long run, your business model has to be in it for the long run as well, right? So I think I always bring it back to the business model. If your business model is in it for the long run, that means you've put all your economics in right place. You've identified your avenues of growth. You've identified the partnerships that you need to do. You've identified long-term investments that you need to make. These are usually your business decisions. But marketing is the same thing if you look at it with that lens, right? If I need to have a brand that 10 years down the line, consumers or my Gen Z or Alpha or whoever we're targeting is aspiring towards, I have to build from it today, right? Yeah. So the today is what is incrementally building up to there. So I think what I try and get them to do is appreciate that, okay, this is our North Star. Now, if that is my North Star, how am I going to reach my North Star? And that North Star has to align very naturally with the business objective.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that is where that conversation usually comes into play. So I think I've been able to thankfully get most of them over the line on that North Star. Okay, this is the tone of voice, this is the brand values we want to build. And it's not going to be one mega campaign. It's going to be multiple small ones.
A lot of people don't understand or do not appreciate the fact that marketing is not about what you posted yesterday or what you're going to post tomorrow. It is, marketing has nothing to do with that. That is sales' problem.
Correct.
Marketing is about the long-term vision. It is about understanding what your brand stands for, and more importantly, what will your brand never do, because nobody kind of addresses that question. And in corporate space, it becomes really easy to kind of align with what will your brand never do, because you have structures in place, you have guidelines to follow. Somebody's job is on the line if they don't follow these guidelines. But obviously in the founder space, that is, it's a gray line, right? So what have been some of the challenges that you might have faced when it comes to this understanding, outside of the fact that they want an instant gratification? Has there been, you're a consumer research person, you work on insights, has there been a trend or something that founders will always function like this and they will not get it?
I mean, I can give you an example of a recent one that I did about a few months ago. I was working on a project with these guys, and the founder, he was very interested in all these TikToks, and apparently that was what he believed was the way to get sales. And I was telling him that, I really don't think that that's the way. That is the way for us to build brand culture. That is the way to participate in culture, right? That is okay. If this is a trending topic, you want to tweet on it, you want to reply on this, that absolutely we must do as a brand, right? But at the same time, let's not confuse that with giving us sales.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's not necessarily going to happen. And as a brand or as a business, we should also be okay with that. Not every initiative that a marketing team takes will result in sales, right? It will result in, hopefully, if it's done right, it will result in some amount of memory accumulation, right? It'll make sure that the consumers maybe think of you, remember you for a little while longer. So I think that is something that I have found to be very challenging, because, they think like, okay, we've done this on TikTok and we partnered with this one little influencer, and, this campaign drove this much conversion.
Yeah.
So and then now where is the sales? I was like, well, they don't have to necessarily bring in the sales. Yes, of course, today marketing is getting a lot more scientific. You can actually attribute it directly back to all of these things, sales. But a lot of times the initiatives that we do are just to seed the brand. I think because founders are so lost in their own brand a lot of times, right? They're so passionate about it. That's the only thing revolving around their head, right? Or their, the tight teams that they lead. But for the consumer, that brand is largely insignificant. As harsh as that is to hear and, say, the brand is largely insignificant. You are, I mean, they don't even remember KFC for most of the time, right? And I used to work on, imagine such a big brand. It's not top of mind for you. So why would a, startup, small little brand in one small region be that important? It won't. So that's what I have to that's my challenge with them a lot of times. Like, your world is 100% with this brand. Customers, it's like 0.001%. So,
if that.
Yeah. So how do we get closer to converting it into more memory space is the challenge, right? And I don't think founders, a lot of times, they don't think of that. They think that this is it. It's such a fantastic thing. This is the best thing. Yeah, it is. But enough people don't know.
Yeah. No, I mean, again, from experience and whatever, you understand that you yourself have to believe that this is the best thing since cooked rice if you have to sell yourself to anywhere. But what does get lost in the process is to understand that not everybody else's world revolves around you. So I think that challenge of meeting or making a marriage of the expectations versus the reality is what you end up doing a lot. And tell me, what was something you learned about yourself in the process?
Well, I think I'm still discovering a lot, to be honest, because it's not been a very long transition for me. But I think, I'm learning to, just be okay with failure. And it's not an easy thing to admit, or not an easy thing to kind of live with when that happens with you, because I've lost a few clients. Maybe some of my campaigns that I kind of were designing or working with didn't go as planned. And then, have an awkward conversation with, the founders. So, when you have the comfort of a corporate cushion, a lot of this is not addressed.
Not your problem. Yeah.
It's not my problem.
Yeah.
Okay, the agency must have whatever, or, we try and find like that one metric that was actually good. Okay, conversions weren't there, but look at engagement. Okay, or the engagement wasn't there, but look at view through. And view through is not even an important element, but let's. So you find ways to cushion yourself when you have a certain stability. But when you don't, and when you're on your kind of trying your hand at by yourself, I think every one of those feels a lot deeper to you. Every one of those you are also as an individual more conflicted by. So I have to find ways to just be okay with that a lot of times. It's like, okay, hey, I'm also learning. It's just a, short period that I've gotten into it. And the fact that I'm in it and I'm still, kind of, up there and surviving is also a great way to, kind of just reorient myself. So, but that takes a lot of time. It every day it requires you to keep motivating, keep pushing, and not looking at those points. I think outside of that, for me, it's also been that, when you're in the thick of things, and when you're kind of constantly doing the routine and the work, you actually don't realize how much you've accumulated in terms of knowledge. At least we don't appreciate it. I know. I when I was in my last corporate, I don't think I sat back saying, oh my God, I've learned so much, and I've come to this position. I actually never did. Maybe there are people who do, but I didn't. But now when I'm out of it, I look back and I'm like, my God, like those 18 years I've spent, and I have done this and I've done this. And when some founder has a point to me, and, I can dip into my memory and say, yes, we tried this. And so it's given me a new appreciation of my experience and what I can bring to the table. So I don't think I ever thought of it like that, because you're always working with the same brand, right? Like I've been with an F&B brand for so long that you're doing the same thing. I mean, at the same time, I'm selling the same product, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same consumer insights twisted here and there. Versus when you're working now with multiple guys who have different points of view, different kinds of demands, different markets, and you're dipping into like past experiences to help them, it kind of gives you a sense of achievement, right? And I think that's a very small, nice little warm feeling that you get, which I think is, I hadn't ever experienced before. So it's a first for me as well.
I completely agree. I think, like you said, it's almost like knowledge is now muscle memory, right? You don't have to think about it. If a question comes to you, without even thinking, what the answer is. And so many times we don't really give value to what we have learned over the years. Like, for instance, I was showing you my situation. It's because in college I did mass comm, so I knew how to play.
How to do this.
So what comes where you don't know.
Correct.
And in the corporate space, like you were mentioning, because there is a bigger team, there are also people who are doing different roles. So there is an accounts guy, there is a finance guy, there is an HR person. And within your team also, there is a graphics guy, there's a digital, whatever. Now, of course, you're doing all of these roles yourself. Which of them has been the most challenging?
I think the most challenging is, by far, is the digital space. Okay. Trying to be in digital marketing today. I mean, for somebody at my years of experience, and I would call myself fairly aged in that sense, trying to stay up with it. I mean, there's just too much happening. It's too fast. There are just too many apps, tools. I mean, you just look at the amazing stuff that's happening, all with AI. Like, how quickly can I convert creative? How quickly can I have it reviewed, developed, executed, and then measured in different ways? It's just changing too much. It's changing too fast. So I think, like, even though I have done it, I've had teams who have done it, and agencies who are doing it for me. Even now, if I'm kind of being a part of it myself physically, it's just something that is becoming, like, you really have to always
be on.
You just like, you blink and there's a new app, or there's a new feature, or there's something new that has changed in this landscape, right? I mean, people keep saying, okay, now SEO is dead, or cold emails are dead, or whatever. Like something's always, dying
Always
and
there.
something is emerging.
Yeah.
So I think for me, that is probably the one that I find the most, sort of exciting, because there's just so much happening. But also at the same time, it's very intimidating, because you're like, okay, I have to keep learning.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, content creation, content development, brand management, sort of strategic brand thinking, those are all fairly established, and they're slightly slower, I would say, to change. Versus this space is just too dynamic.
Yeah. No, I can imagine. I mean, I think the rules of marketing and how it works hasn't changed from when Mr. Kotler wrote his book. But
Good.
the tools of marketing have definitely changed, in the
Absolutely.
sense that there is now so much going on. What are some of your favorite tools right now? Which is the new app that you really kicked about?
So there was, there's actually a lot of tools, but I'm not sure, like they're not the ones that I'm using for my, necessarily for my work, but like some of the new ones that I've discovered along the way is Engage.ai. I've seen, what is it? Napkin. I've seen Tapio. Like these are industries that have set up behind social media. Right? So like, how do you sort of power into social media in a big way, right? What I feel is like, even within, like, when you look at Instagram, or when you look at LinkedIn, or you look at your TikToks, etc., there are industries behind them that are fueling a lot of the content and a lot of, sort of partnerships that are happening on these. And those are the ones that I'm finding like, like it's just amazing to me, because it's like, there's an app to get into a social media app.
Yeah.
And that's just that just shows the power of how AI or digital transformation is happening, right? Because now I can create content faster, and I can quickly like have it reviewed, whether you talk about your chat GPTs or any of the versions that have come after that, they're all helping you to make something, right? I mean, if used in the right way, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, I don't know where this AI journey ends. And of course, the power of the whole, the sheer power of what artificial intelligence can do or potentially will do, it's not as significant, you could say, as the Industrial Revolution. We talked about the challenges that you have faced. We've talked about the stuff that's worked for you, tools that you use or teams that work for you. But if I was to step away and look at this whole transition from your personal life, how did that work? What is the biggest challenge there?
I think from a personal life, it wasn't, and it still isn't, easy or comfortable, because I think it's especially when you have like a full setup, you've got kids, you've got I think dependencies, you've got things like that are happening at your end. I think those are always things that kind of weigh in the back of your mind, right? In terms of making sure that from a financial aspect, you are covered, you're sorted, you have covered for a long term, right? I mean, not only now and here and now. So I think that constantly sort of weighs on your mind, even if it's not a big thing. I mean, even if it's like your passion, like right now I'm enjoying where I am, but I will not deny that, yes, that financial aspect of it is always there somewhere in the back of your mind, right? Okay, I need to make sure that I'm kind of continuing to meet the living standards that I had.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's an important thing. And I think like most people don't want to kind of mention that, but for me, it is important, right? And I have a certain lifestyle that I want to continue to lead. I want to make sure that I'm matching it.
You worked hard for it. Why not?
Exactly. You spent so many years trying to get here, so you don't want to go down. But I think what's important in that is that, you when you have the kind of support and setup that I have behind me, I've got my mother-in-law, my husband, my kids. I think everybody's very supportive. And we're all kind of connected and interconnected. Like I'm telling you, like right now, this setup that I have with you, like my son came to the rescue. Like, okay, mom, let me help you set it up. Let me do this. It's just very, I think it's just kind of brought us back together very nicely as, okay, we're all in this together, like, okay, okay, what can we do? How can we help? Learning my kids to be a little bit more independent, because my schedule is flexible. Yeah. So sometimes I'm not there when I should be, etc. Right. So otherwise they knew, okay, she'll leave at 8 o'clock in the morning or whatever, and she's back by 4, 5, whatever. Yeah. Now I'm a lot more flexible. So they've also kind of stepped up their game to be independent or doing things. So I think those are just sweet things at a personal level that I have seen happening, seen us changing as a family, and kind of still learning along the way. But, we're kind of enjoying this little vague process, if I may call it.
And how was moving back to India? What was the biggest adjustment there?
I mean, see, it wasn't like I was gone for very long. So for me, it was not a huge, drastic shift. I think it was more for my kids because they hadn't necessarily grown up here. So they thankfully are enjoying it. We are actually, I think, again, because I'm in this now startup conversation, in this founder conversation so much, that, like I said, like that energy and that vibe, that's the only thing that's right now kind of with us. Right. So even we're also like kind of, trying to think of, okay, what else can we do? What else can we add to our experience, which is different, which is new? Let's try this, So I think that to me would not have happened if I had continued to stay in a far more stable economy or a stable work culture. So I think that definitely has brought like a little bit of, like I don't know what's the word for it, but like it's just a burst of energy back into, a charge. Like an electric current like kind of comes back and you're like, oh, okay, kya kare? Like that's the question.
Every time I speak to, even in my last conversation, we kind of came to this point, and with you also, it's almost the moment you make that choice and you make that shift, it no longer becomes about what all I will have to do, and it suddenly becomes about what all I can do.
Exactly. Yeah. It's all about what can I do. And I think, sometimes I think I do want to make this point that I think sometimes when you're after a certain age, that hesitation to ask that question, like, what all can I do, becomes very difficult. You don't ask that question to yourself anymore because you're like, okay, it's been like, I'm 40 plus. I don't want to be, what more can I do, man? Like I've done, now I want to let me get the last 10 years in a nice retirement and work towards that, etc., right? But to be able to ask that question, what more can I do, is like opening up this box, which is scary and like fun at the same time. But I think it's important for people at a certain junction to ask that question.
Fair point. Yeah. Because you don't ask yourself that question, even if you'll come home, you'll crib about the boss, you'll crib about the job, and then next morning you'll pick up your bag and you'll go again, because it's
and even if you have an idea, you let it be, because well, now, you're not motivated or you're not charged enough to kind of take that forward. Even on the side. And I think that's what I regret. Like, I think in these all 18 years, I never did anything on the side. Not as whatever, but like even as for my passion or even just for myself, something else. I never did something on the side as a whatever, like, expansion of my own mental capabilities or whatever. And I think that's something that I'm going to try and tell my kids, no, please do like 5 things. You don't know.
Right. At least try everything out.
At least try.
And this kind of ties into what you started with, right? That in the corporate culture, you become comfortable. So you don't want to rock the boat in any way or form. And we start identifying so much with our work that, this is the company, I'm AVP, I'm marketing director. You are identifying so much with it that letting just that one title go is probably the most difficult thing to do. Everything else will kind of figure itself out, but you can't let that go.
That the weight of that designation, the weight of that designation, it actually starts weighing you down. And you don't realize it. So letting it go is liberating, but at the same time, letting it go is like
the scariest thing.
What am I going to do without it? It's the same thing.
But I can obviously see in this conversation, like with the excitement and the energy that you have, that you feel for the industry that you're now working with, within all the sectors that you would have worked with, which one do you find the most exciting and the most promising in India? Like F&B, you said fintech, jewelry, I heard, I think. Which one has been the most exciting?
Well, I think I would continue to say like F&B for me is still like a close to my heart, obviously, because I've been in this industry for a while now. But also because, when I came to India and I was trying to find like, the kind of products that I want to have my kids take to school, I want to give like the kind of products that I want, snacks that I want them to consume. I genuinely am impressed with the quality of, the clean ingredients, sort of better for you, healthier for you options. I did not expect this. It wasn't there when I left, by the way. So when I came back and I'm like, oh my God, there are so many. And the fact that, all of these guys are dipping into ancient grains, they're dipping into ancient recipes, or, it just shows me that as India, we have so much in this field to kind of bring to the table. You don't find like nobody's talking about ragi or whatever, millets anywhere else. Okay, nobody's talking about it. So they might have a lot more processed and cleaner processed, but it's not coming from all of this ancient stuff, right? So I think that I still find that fascinating, and I think it's a great space. The other one I would say is definitely tech. Like I said, I mean, I'm just impressed with the way digital tech is happening, digital campaigns are happening, but even the tech brands that are coming up, right? So whether in the space of fintech or whether it's in the gaming industry, you know, the kind of apps that they're creating, or the kind of the examples that I've given, which are backends to social media campaigns. I just think that these are exciting things. These are places that will eventually become big, you know, but for the time being, of course, there are, you know, these young enthusiastic entrepreneurs who are kind of charging it up. So I think it's not one that I know too much about, but I love the way that it's going. I love the passion and the energy that those guys have, because it's just that's the future. We have to be a part of it.
Yeah. And you know, I mean, again, drawing parallels here, but a lot of times we don't kind of give value to the resources which we talked about. You didn't give value to what you had learned as a resource. You had, you know, India has so much to offer, and people are only now dipping into this. For founders, of course, it's all new, so it's difficult to kind of find reasons to dip back into. But specifically for long-term strategy, how would you define long-term sustainable growth for a brand?
For me, I think it begins with first having like a fairly strategic business plan, right? And like I keep kind of going back to that, because to me, like, marketing is just something to like kind of layer on top of it. It cannot work if your basic fundamentals are like going haywire, right? So I think a lot of times when the founders or somebody, you know, they kind of talk to me or they bring me on board, I do actually try and understand the overall business model, right? What is your overall business model? Where are we heading directionally in terms of a business? Where are we going to make the big bets in the investments, etc.? Where are we going to look at in terms of our avenues for growth? Once you have that, then I think when you layer marketing on top of it to say, okay, now let me fuel this growth. If you want to get into, you know, your e-commerce, then there's a very different strategy. If your thing is big strategic projects in multi-markets and, you know, in other geographies, then there's a very different conversation. So I think that to me is the biggest bridge that we first need to establish. And I think that's where then you can start building strategic, you know, marketing conversations. So now that I have these decided, how can I build the brand? I think the challenge is that a lot of times the people I interact with, they tend to think of it they break it down very quickly. Okay, so packaging will be like this. Okay, so, you know, the colors of the font of our brand will be this and whatever. But that's not the marketing idea, right? And I actually tell them, you know, these are ridiculous things. These can change. You are too small a brand right now to worry about this. This can change. I don't care. You can go through 5 colors of your brand logo, because right now you're still learning. Let's learn, let's figure it out. But we know we want to communicate these 5 values. What is the best way to communicate those 5 values? Let's trial and error, right? So don't get bogged down that, okay, now we've identified a little mascot, which is this little teddy bear. That's it. You know?
And I think the most time is spent on identifying the mascot and identifying the colors and identifying the name, and it's like,
and the font on the packaging, and literally, you know, first get visibility that you exist on the retail shelf.
I mean, it's fantastic if it's a cool looking thing, and it's fantastic if it looks really nice, but that's not the secret sauce, really. It doesn't really matter.
It doesn't matter. And I think what you need to kind of get to them is that it is okay to evolve that. We don't have to get it right the first time. You know, like, I mean, I can tell you, like, even KFC, Pepsi, Coke, I mean, except for Coke, but like in this example, but like most of these guys have changed their logos, right? They didn't start with the logo that they have today. They didn't start with the colors that they have today, with the values they have today. So let's not get bogged down with that.
I mean, Coke specifically, they have done really big bombs, right? New Coke was like, you know, either it was the best marketing strategy ever, or
it bombed.
Either ways, it doesn't matter, because, you know, you are a living, breathing thing. You are a brand. You can change, you can evolve, you can be something else. And speaking of, you are a living, breathing thing and you're a brand, people who are trying to do this, people who are trying to kind of shift away and get into all of this, what's the one thing you would want them to know?
I think I would encourage them to just, maybe like just take some time for introspection and reflection, just kind of sit it out for a bit. I think because when you're in the hustle and bustle of your daily routine and you have this little maybe thread in the back of your mind, but you're not really giving it the mind space that it needs, right? At least I didn't for the longest time. I was like, it's an idea, crazy idea. I've got a system, let me not disrupt. But I think if you have that nag at the back of your head, just taking some time out, maybe taking a break, going out somewhere and just kind of sitting with that idea for a little while and mulling it over sometimes helps, right? Because we tend to kind of very quickly, beat that voice down. Like I have responsibilities. I'm too old. I'm, already so established. I'm waiting for my next promotion, whatever. You've got all of those things. You kill that little voice out.
Yeah.
So I think if you can just give a little 1 week, 2 weeks, I don't know, just give it some time to let that voice, let it come, because it's coming from somewhere. Yeah. It's coming either because you're not fulfilled or you don't find the work fulfilling, or you've discovered after all these years that there is something else that you're now craving, right? You're not the same person you were. So I think we have to find that little window just for that little voice to speak first.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think for me, this was something that I discovered within the coaching process, but it was simply that, one, give yourself the window, and second, actually find a way to talk about it, like voice it out. And then if you measure it through every lens, if you figure out what it needs to look like at the end of the day, you'll probably get somewhere.
Correct. Yeah. I think that's, like sitting with it, voicing it, like you said, even just maybe writing it, jotting it down. Like sometimes just structuring something gives you a little bit more confidence.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And I think the other one would be that for me, it's just, one of the things that I've learned is that, when you take this decision or when you come to it, then it's like very close. You do have cold feet, right? You do feel like, okay, let me just kind of step back. This is too much, right? You're close, and then you kind of, you do this pendulum multiple times. Okay, it happens. And I think what people assume is that maybe a lot of people went into it and they were passionate about, or they had the entrepreneurial skill in them to get into this. I don't have the entrepreneurial skill. I never had it.
Right? I don't think it has to do too much with the entrepreneurial skill also. It is just that.
But that's what we've seen, right? Like when you look at your founders or you look at all these people who are building brands or companies, everybody's like, he had that business mind, he has that entrepreneurial skill, and you don't see yourself like that because you're just you're just a corporate person, or you're just a normal whatever. You don't think, like, at least I didn't think I had that. If you ask any of my friends, in the last few years, nobody will say, can she do it on her own? Probably not. But I think when you sit with it and you realize like what is it that you're trying to give shape to, it's not that same definition of entrepreneur. Exactly. This is also entrepreneur, right? Like I'm just doing it on my own. I'm consultant or whatever, but it's my own thing. So, but we don't define it in that. And then you think like, I need to be business minded. I need to be good in maths. I need to be good in taxations. You start, like all of that comes into mind. But how do you put that to rest and kind of?
I think being an entrepreneur has tags. It has labels in the sense of, you have to be business minded, you have to be sharp, and you have to be this and you have to that. And then it has the process. And the process largely is simply to say, what needs to be done? Do I have the skills to do it? Will I make money while doing it? Do I like doing it? And just go ahead.
Yeah.
So if you break it down into process, it could be that simple. But of course, like you said, pendulum, we keep going back and forth.
You do, a lot of it.
We take the time to get here. But anyways, I think that's all I had for you. And it was good to catch up. And thank you so much. I love how exciting this conversation became in terms of what's happening in India and, growth story and all of that. I am a great believer in the India growth story, and I'm, so glad to hear that you have too. Thank you again. Thank you for your time.
Well, thanks for having me. It just, again, it felt like, 18 years hasn't passed between us, by the way. It's just chatting away and forgetting how much time we have spent.